If you're ready for a tale of survival, impossible bonds, and the moment aliens realize humans can tame the untamable, make sure to like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the story. Now let's dive in. The jungle moon of Karzul breathed like a living thing. Mists rolled over the canopy, shrouding the serrated ridgelines in veils of silver. The cries of unseen predators echoed across the trees, each one a reminder that this was no place for the weak or the reckless. Yet the hunters of the guild advanced, armored in chitin plates and breathing the acrid tang of their recycled air. Their quarry was close. Every tracker in the group swore the beast's scent thickened with each step. At the head of the column walked Zorik of the Jekthar, his massive shoulders glistening with ceremonial war paint. The Jekthar were bred for conquest, but even among them Zorik was a figure of infamy, ruthless, precise, and hungry for glory. His warblade, a curved slab of alloy and bone, tapped against his thigh as he scanned the horizon. "Do you smell it?" he growled, his voice a rasp that cut through the humid air. One of the smaller hunters, a lithe Vren tracker with quills fanned along his skull, lifted a sensor wand. The readouts fluttered in agitation, colors bleeding red. Closer. The Veyrath passed through here less than an hour ago. Its trail is deliberate, almost as if it wanted us to follow. Zorik bared his teeth in a grin. Let it want. Today the guild proves its dominion. They all knew what they pursued. The Veyrath was not merely a beast. It was legend incarnate, a monster whose name sent mercenary crews scattering and whose claws had shredded entire platoons of soldiers. Standing 3 stories high, plated with bone-hard ridges and armed with jaws that could shear steel, it was the jungle's sovereign. Every attempt to capture it had ended in carnage. The council itself had branded the creature uncontainable, which was precisely why Zorik intended to drag it before them in chains. Whispers rippled through the ranks as they entered a canyon hemmed by sheer cliffs. Here the air was heavy, the mist clinging thicker, and every step echoed like a drumbeat. The younger hunters shifted uneasily, eyes darting toward the shadows. "This is a killing ground," muttered one. Zorik turned a glare on him that silenced the complaint. "We are the hunters," he said. "Never the hunted." Then the ground trembled. A low vibration coursed through the stone, building into a rolling thunder. Pebbles rattled loose from the cliffs. The sound of claws scraping rock pierced the fog. The hunters tightened ranks, weapons raised. The Veyrath emerged. Its silhouette grew from the mist like a nightmare taking shape. 6 limbs, each ending in talons longer than blades. A maw studded with jagged teeth. Eyes like burning coals set deep beneath a crown of horned ridges. The hunters had seen Holos, but nothing prepared them for the sheer scale of the beast. Its exhale gusted like a furnace blast, stirring the fog in whirlwinds. For the first time some of the guild faltered. Fingers twitched against triggers. Quills flattened. Zorik alone stepped forward, his warblade raised high. "Veyrath," he roared, the word echoing. "Kneel before your masters." But the creature did not attack. It did not even snarl. Instead, it halted at the canyon's center, its chest rising and falling with slow, measured breaths. Its head dipped, not toward Zorik, not toward the hunters, but toward something in the mist behind it. A figure stepped out. The hunters blinked in disbelief. The figure was no alien warrior, no arm of the guild. It was a man. Tall but gaunt, dressed in patched survival gear scoured by years of jungle wear, his dark hair hung loose to his shoulders. A rifle rested across his back, though his hands were empty, palms open. His boots crunched against gravel as he walked with a steady calm no sane being would show in the presence of a predator. He did not flinch when the Veyrath shifted, did not falter when its massive head swung low. Instead, he reached out and laid his hand against the ridged scales of its muzzle. The hunters gasped as the beast, apex terror of the moon, bowed. The man's voice carried, quiet yet sharp as steel. "He's not yours to take." Zorik's jaw clenched. "What trick is this? Who dares?" The man's eyes, a piercing gray, met his without a flicker of fear. "Name's Elias Kane. And this predator isn't your trophy. He's with me." The canyon stilled. Even the jungle seemed to hold its breath. One of the hunters spat in disbelief. "Impossible. No creature yields. Not the Veyrath." But Elias simply kept his hand on the beast's scales. The Veyrath, Asher, though the hunters did not yet know the name, stood unmoving, its massive frame coiled like a shield around him. Its breaths rumbled like distant thunder, yet no hostility radiated. Instead, its posture was protective. Zorik barked a laugh that rang hollow in the canyon. A human? Stranded vermin clinging to life in this jungle? And we are to believe you have tamed it? Believe what you want, Elias said, voice even. But if you think it bows to anyone else, try your luck. The hunters shifted, uncertain. Their sensors confirmed what their eyes denied. The predator was calm, pulse steady, not primed for attack. And the human stood at its heart as though born to it. Zorak's pride surged hotter than reason. Enough of this farce. Net it, he snarled. The order broke the spell. Cannons hummed and fired. A weighted mesh of energy and alloy exploded outward, wrapping the predator in a crackling snare. The Veyrath shrieked, a sound that rattled bones and sent several hunters sprawling. The air shook with its fury. But then came the sound of shredding metal. With a surge of muscle, the beast tore the net apart, strands snapping like twigs. Sparks cascaded to the ground. Hunters scrambled backward, shouting. The predator did not lunge. Did not kill. It lowered its body again beside Elias, the fury in its eyes banked but not spent. Elias's voice cut through the chaos, calm yet edged like a blade. You don't understand. He's holding back. And in that canyon, with the shattered remains of their strongest snare at their feet, the hunters began to realize they had not cornered a beast at all. They had walked into the shadow of something far more dangerous, something they could neither cage nor control. Elias Kane stood unmoving as the dust from the shredded net drifted down around him. His hand remained steady against the predator's scaled muzzle, a silent reassurance between man and beast. The hunters shifted uneasily, their weapons trained yet their wills faltering. None of them had expected this. The Veyrath was supposed to be unyielding, an apex sovereign of the jungle, yet it obeyed the signal of a single human. Zorak's eyes burned with disbelief. Pride warred with instinct as he studied the scene before him. Explain yourself, he demanded, his voice a guttural snarl. How does a creature of legend bow to a soft-skinned outworlder? Elias's lips curled in the faintest shadow of a smile. It's not bowing, he said. It's choosing. Murmurs ran through the hunters. The Evren tracker shook his quills in agitation. Nonsense. No beast chooses. It dominates or dies. Elias shifted his stance, drawing his hand away from the predator's head. The massive creature, Asher, remained utterly still, his molten eyes locked on the hunters as though awaiting permission. You see him as a beast to break, Elias said evenly. But when I found him he was bleeding out, caught in a poacher's snare that cut to the bone. I didn't chain him. I freed him. I gave him food, water, time. And in return he stayed. That's not domination. That's trust. Zorak scoffed, though the edges of his bravado were fraying. A tale for children. The Veyrath knows only blood. Elias's gaze sharpened. Maybe that's all you've ever seen. But a predator's heart is not so different from ours. Loyalty can be earned, even from a creature bred to terrify your kind. Silence pressed down, broken only by the distant call of jungle birds. The hunters exchanged uneasy glances. The idea itself was dangerous, subversive. If the humans spoke truth, then their entire creed, that strength alone commanded respect, was fractured. Zorak would not allow that fracture to spread. He raised his warblade, its serrated edge glinting in the dim light. You claim him as yours? Then surrender him. The guild will take both beast and man as tribute to the council. You'll live long enough to tell them how you achieved this trick. Elias didn't move. His expression was calm, but a storm brewed behind his eyes. I'm not surrendering him. Not to you, not to anyone. Asher doesn't belong in a cage. The beast rumbled, a low growl that vibrated through the canyon floor. Hunters instinctively backed a step, though their weapons did not lower. You defy the guild, Zorak said, his voice rising like a drumbeat. Do you grasp the weight of that? I've lived on this moon for 7 years, Elias replied. Every sunrise I've fought for air in my lungs. Your threats don't weigh much compared to that. The Evren tracker hissed under his breath. 7 years? Impossible. No human survives more than weeks in this place. I didn't survive, Elias said. I adapted. He met their eyes one by one, his voice carrying the gravity of a man tempered by isolation and struggle. Asher isn't my pet. He's my partner. And together we're still standing when others fell. The canyon seemed smaller now, the air denser. Some hunters shifted uneasily, fingers tapping against triggers without conviction. They had heard the rumors about humans, whispered tales of resilience and ferocity that bordered on madness. Seeing it before them unsettled their certainty. Zorak's pride, however, was unshaken. To yield now would mean humiliation, and humiliation was death in the guild. He snarled, spittle flashing between his teeth. I see no partnership. Only illusion. If this beast truly obeys you, then command it. Order it to kneel before me. Prove your words. Elias tilted his head. His eyes narrowed, as though weighing whether the demand even deserved acknowledgement. Then he shook his head. I don't command him. I ask. That's the difference you'll never understand. The refusal struck Zorik harder than a blade. Rage ignited in him, burning away the last of his caution. With a guttural roar he signaled his squad. Bind them both. Bring me the human's head if he resists. Hunters raised their cannons. The canyon bristled with energy as the air charged with the threat of violence. Asher's body tensed, claws gouging furrows in the rock. Elias raised a hand, palm flat. Easy, he murmured to the predator, his voice low but firm. Asher stilled, though his muscles quivered with restrained fury. The first shot fired. It never reached its mark. With blinding speed, Asher swung a talon and shredded the bolt midair, sparks cascading like falling stars. A second volley followed, but each blast was deflected or evaded, the predator moving with terrifying precision. He did not attack, not yet, only shielded the human at his side. The hunters faltered. Their strongest weapons had no effect. Panic rippled through their ranks. Elias's voice rang out through the chaos, hard and clear. You see what he's doing? He's holding back. Not because he can't kill you, but because I've asked him not to. Zorik's chest heaved, fury mingled with fear. The realization gnawed at his mind, though he refused to name it. If true, then this human commanded a power greater than any guild arsenal, not through force but through something far more dangerous, choice freely given. Elias stepped forward, his hand brushing Asher's flank as he advanced into the storm of raised weapons. His eyes locked on Zorik's. I'm giving you one chance, he said quietly, but the words carried like thunder. Leave. Go back to your council. Tell them the predator is not theirs to claim. If you push this, none of you will walk out alive. The canyon fell silent save for the predator's breathing, deep and steady, like the rhythm of a war drum. Hunters wavered. Some lowered their weapons, fear outweighing pride. But Zorik's eyes gleamed with dangerous resolve. Never, he growled. His grip tightened on the warblade. I will not be remembered as the fool who fled before a human. He raised the blade high, signaling another assault. Asher's growl deepened, rolling like thunder across the cliffs. Elias's expression hardened. For a heartbeat, the tension balanced on a knife's edge. And then the sky split with the shriek of engines. A new shadow cut across the canyon as ships descended through the mist. Their hulls gleamed black, their insignia unmistakable. Council enforcers. Drawn by the hunter's beacon, they had come to witness, to judge, perhaps to destroy. The hunters froze, caught between terror and opportunity. Zorik's sneer returned. Good. Let the council see. Let them decide what abomination you've wrought. Elias glanced skyward, the descending ships reflecting in his gray eyes. His hand tightened on Asher's scales, steadying the predator. He did not look afraid. But deep within he knew the stakes had just shifted. This was no longer a fight against hunters blinded by pride. This was about the council itself, the heart of galactic order. And they would not take kindly to a human rewriting the laws of power. The enforcers' ships descended like obsidian daggers through the mist, their engines a predatory hum that vibrated through stone and bone alike. The hunters scattered into formations, their fear masked as discipline. Zorik held his ground, chest thrust forward as though the enforcer's presence had been summoned for his triumph alone. Elias remained still, one hand pressed against Asher's flank, the predator's growl low and resonant, vibrating through the canyon floor. The landing doors split open with hydraulic precision. Figures emerged, clad in dark armor trimmed with the sigil of the council. Their movements were disciplined, every gesture sharpened by years of training and the unshakable authority of their office. The leader stepped forward, his voice carrying effortlessly over the echoes of the jungle. Hunters Guild, you have signaled distress. Report. Zorik seized the moment, bowing with a warrior's flourish. Council enforcers, you arrive in time to witness history. We have cornered the Veyrath, but we uncovered something greater, this human. His voice dripped with venom as he gestured toward Elias. He has bent the beast to his will. This trespasser has broken the natural order. The enforcer's visor tilted toward Elias, then toward Asher, who loomed with quiet menace at his side. The predator's molten eyes gleamed, reflecting firelight that wasn't there. The officer's silence stretched long enough to weigh heavy on the canyon air. Finally he spoke, his tone like iron. Human, step away from the creature. Elias didn't move. His shoulders remained squared, his face unflinching. No. The enforcers stiffened, hands brushing the grips of their weapons. The refusal wasn't shouted, but it carried a weight sharper than defiance. It carried certainty. Asher's tail lashed once across the rock, gouging stone like parchment, a reminder of what defiance could cost. Elias took a step forward, his boots grinding against gravel. He's not enslaved. He's not controlled. He stays because he chooses to. You think that's a violation of order? Maybe your order was flawed to begin with. A murmur ran through the hunters, disbelief mingled with unease. They had lived by the creed of dominance, but Elias's words hung heavy with dangerous possibility. Zorik spat, eager to reclaim ground. Lies. The beast's restraint is nothing but trickery. He is dangerous and so is the man who manipulates him. End them both and let the council's supremacy endure. The enforcer leader raised a gauntlet hand. Enough. The council does not act on words alone. Proof will be required. His voice lowered, laced with cold authority. Release the creature. If it does not slaughter you where you stand, your claim will be heard. If it does, his gaze sharpened. Then your deception dies with you. Elias's jaw tightened, but he gave a slow nod. He drew his hand away from Asher's flank. For a moment, the canyon breathed silence. Hunters tensed, weapons quivering in nervous hands. The enforcers readied themselves for bloodshed. Asher stood unmoving. Then, with deliberate grace, the predator padded forward, not toward prey, not toward violence, but back to Elias's side. The Titan lowered his head until it brushed Elias's shoulder, a gesture of wordless allegiance. Gasps broke across the canyon. Even hardened warriors flinched at the implication. The enforcers exchanged muted glances behind their visors. Zorik roared, fury overtaking reason. A trick? A beast cannot choose. End them before this infection spreads. He surged forward, his warblade flashing with murderous intent. Asher reacted instantly, his roar splitting the sky. But before he struck, Elias raised a hand, stopping him with nothing more than a gesture. The predator froze, muscles trembling with restrained violence, eyes locked on Zorik. The restraint was more terrifying than an attack. The realization sank in. This human truly had the monster's loyalty, a bond deeper than the guild's weapons, deeper than the council's decrees. Zorik's blade swung, but Elias met him head-on, catching the strike with a scavenged combat knife. The clash rang out like a bell, sparks scattering. Elias's frame, hardened by years of survival, met the alien warlord's brute strength with unexpected resilience. The hunters watched in stunned silence. This was no cornered prey. This was a man who had adapted to a world that devoured armies. His movements were honed by desperation and survival, his every strike precise. He didn't fight like a soldier of the council. He fought like the jungle itself had carved him into a weapon. Zorik pressed, snarling with effort, his warblade hammering down with brutal force. Elias slid aside, turning his momentum against him, driving an elbow into his ribs. The Jekthar staggered, enraged by the humiliation. You're nothing but a castaway. Zorik spat. Maybe, Elias said through clenched teeth, but even a castaway learns to swim. Zorik lunged again, reckless now, pride outweighing discipline. This time Asher moved without command, sweeping his massive tail to the ground in front of Zorik. The warlord tripped, sprawling in the dust. He looked up into the predator's eyes, his bravado faltering at last. The enforcer's leader raised a hand, signaling stillness. The canyon went quiet again, the air taut with the weight of revelation. You have shown restraint, the enforcer said, his voice measured but uneasy. And the creature has shown loyalty. The council will hear of this. His visor tilted down toward Elias. But do not mistake curiosity for acceptance. You are a danger human. More dangerous than the beast at your side. Elias's breathing was steady, his expression unreadable. Then they'd better decide if their fear outweighs their sense. Because I'm not giving him up. The enforcer's hand twitched as though tempted to order an execution here and now. But something, perhaps pragmatism, perhaps unease, held him back. The council will judge. Until then you walk on borrowed time. Zorik staggered upright, humiliated yet unbroken in pride. His eyes burned with vengeance. Borrowed time ends quickly in the guild, he snarled. Elias's gaze met his, unflinching. So does arrogance. The canyon held the silence of an unfinished storm, every figure knowing the confrontation was far from over. The enforcers had witnessed enough to fear, the hunters had seen enough to doubt, and Zorik had tasted enough shame to demand blood. Asher shifted his weight beside Elias, his massive frame casting a shadow over the alien warlord. The Predator's eyes burned with the promise of violence yet withheld, and that restraint spoke louder than any roar. The conflict was no longer about a beast in chains. It was about the balance of power in the galaxy itself. And though Elias had bought himself a reprieve, the storm that gathered on the horizon promised to break with fury. The enforcers tightened their formation, their black armor gleaming beneath the canyon's haze. Weapons hummed faintly, not yet raised but ready with a twitch of command. Elias stood at the center of it all, one hand resting against Asher's scarred flank. The Predator's breathing was steady, his gaze locked on the newcomers with predatory stillness, waiting for Elias's signal. The lead enforcer stepped closer, his voice amplified by the vox in his helmet. "Human, you have altered the balance of this world. The guild claims you have broken the order set by the council. You will answer." Elias's jaw clenched. He had spent 7 years with nothing but his own voice and Asher's rumbling breath for company. Now, surrounded by alien soldiers who spoke of order while carrying weapons built for extermination, he felt the absurdity of their demand. "Answer for what?" he said, his voice calm, deliberate. "For surviving? For proving that strength isn't the only way to win loyalty." Zorik pushed forward, fury still staining his face. He pointed at Elias with his warblade, the edge glinting like a shard of night. "He's dangerous. If a human can tame the Veyrath, what else can his kind twist to their service? Today it is this beast. Tomorrow it could be armies. He must be crushed now." The enforcer turned his helm slightly as though weighing the words. The council forbade attempts to bind the Predator. And yet, his gaze shifted back to Asher, who stood poised but tranquil. "It stands at your side. Not shackled. Not enraged. Choosing." The canyon bristled with unease. Hunters whispered to one another, their earlier certainty dissolving into doubt. Some stared at Elias with unease, others with reluctant awe. None could deny what they had seen. The Predator obeyed not out of fear but out of trust. Elias took a step forward, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "If you think he's bound, set him free. See what he does." The enforcer leader stilled. His hand hovered above his weapon, the instinct of authority resisting the risk. Zorik hissed in outrage. "This is madness. If the beast is released, we'll all die." "Will you?" Elias asked. He placed his hand on Asher's side, then slowly withdrew it. The great beast shifted, molten eyes sweeping across the gathered hunters, then the enforcers. The silence stretched like a blade's edge. Asher could have torn them apart in a heartbeat. Instead, he stepped forward, circled Elias once, and then lowered his massive head against the man's shoulder, exhaling a sound that was almost a sigh. The canyon erupted in gasps. Even hardened hunters stumbled backward. The enforcer's stance faltered for the first time, their rigid discipline bending beneath the weight of what they had just witnessed. Elias's voice was low, but every syllable cut through the silence. "You can cage beasts. You can chain soldiers. But you can't command loyalty. That has to be earned." For a fleeting moment, the canyon seemed balanced on revelation. The enforcer leader did not move, his helmet reflecting the impossible image of man and monster standing together. But Zorik's pride could not bear it. He let out a bellowing roar and lunged, his warblade arcing down in a strike aimed to cleave Elias in two. Asher moved faster than sight. His body slammed forward, intercepting the blow with a sweep of his forelimb. Sparks erupted as steel screeched against bone-plated scales. The Predator roared, a sound that shook the cliffs and sent birds fleeing in terrified flocks. The hunters dove for cover. The enforcers snapped into formation, weapons charging to full. The canyon became a heartbeat from exploding into war. Elias pressed his palm against Asher's chest, steadying him. "Easy." His voice was steel wrapped in calm. The Predator stilled, though his massive frame trembled with fury, his wounded forelimb bleeding where the blade had bitten shallow. Elias's gaze turned to Zorik, who stood panting, blade still raised though his arms quivered from the impact. "You call me dangerous," Elias said, voice low and sharp, "but you're the one swinging blindly at what you don't understand." Zorik sneered through his rage. "If the council won't strike you down, then I will." The enforcer leader's voice rang like a thunderclap. "Enough." The authority in it cut through the chaos. Every weapon lowered by a fraction, though no one relaxed. "The council will not decide here in the dirt of this moon. This human and his companion will be judged at the heart of the galaxy." His words carried both warning and promise. Elias wiped blood from his brow, not his own but Asher's, and said nothing. His silence spoke louder than any declaration. He had no intention of being paraded like a captive, but now was not the moment to reveal it. The enforcer leader studied him as though trying to pierce the man's thoughts. Know this, human, your bond unsettles more than hunters. It unsettles empires. You may believe yourself free, but the weight of fear your kind inspires will crush you if you're not careful. Elias held his stare, unwavering. Then let it crush me. I didn't ask for their fear. But I won't give up what I've earned. Asher lowered his head beside him, rumbling softly. The sound was protective, almost defiant. The message needed no translation. The enforcers stepped back toward their ship, the leader giving one final order. We will return to the council. Prepare yourself, human. When they summon you, no jungle will shield you from judgment. Zorak's glare burned as the black-armored figures retreated. His humiliation festered, twisting into something darker than rage. Judgment will come sooner than that, he muttered, his grip tightening on his blade. Elias heard the words but did not rise to them. He was watching Asher, running a hand over the beast's wounded limb, whispering words too quiet for the others to hear. The predator exhaled in response, the canyon resonating with the sound of trust that no law could command. The hunters dispersed in silence, their certainty shattered. Some cast Elias glances of respect they dared not voice, others looked at him with fear that had no end. Zorak lingered in the mist, his hatred unhidden, his pride demanding retribution. When the last engine roar faded and the jungle reclaimed its quiet, Elias sat at Asher's side, pressing a cloth against the bleeding gash. We bought time, he murmured. But that's all. The predator's golden eye blinked slowly, unafraid. In the silence of the canyon, man and beast sat together beneath the shadow of war yet to come. The hunters had come seeking a trophy. The council had come seeking judgment. Neither left with what they wanted. But both carried the same seed of fear. And fear Elias knew would draw them back. The night before the storm, Elias barely slept. The canyon's air was thick with silence, yet beneath it pulsed a tension he could not ignore. Asher rested near him, coiled like a mountain of scaled muscle, but even the predator's usual steady breathing was edged with unease. The bond they shared was more than companionship. It was a rhythm of instincts, and Elias felt the disturbance ripple through it. They both knew what was coming. At dawn, the jungle awakened in shrieks and rustles, but something in the soundscape was wrong. The cries were too sharp, the movements too sparse. The smaller creatures had fled. Asher lifted his head, nostrils flaring, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. Elias's hand went to the grip of his battered rifle. He didn't need words to understand what Asher already knew. The hunters were returning, and this time they hadn't come alone. The first shimmer of ships appeared in the sky, dark silhouettes descending through the mist. Their engines thundered across the cliffs, scattering birds and flocks of terrified frenzy. Elias stood, squinting against the morning light as sleek enforcer dropships cut through the canyon's air. Behind them came heavier craft, hunters' transports bristling with weapons. And at their head, Zorak's vessel glared like a shard of iron carved for vengeance. The ground trembled as the ships landed, their hatches bursting open. Rows of hunters spilled out, armored and armed, their eyes hard with grim resolve. The enforcers followed, their black exocets gleaming with lethal precision. The council had chosen not to wait. They had come to deliver judgment here, before any whisper of Elias and Asher's bond could spread too far. Zorak emerged last, towering, his warblade strapped across his back, his expression carved from rage. He pointed toward Elias and his beast. There he stands, the human who dares to upset the order of the galaxy. Today his blasphemy ends. Elias felt Asher tense beside him, the predator's low rumble vibrating through the ground. He placed a hand on the beast's shoulder, steadying him. His own voice carried steady across the canyon. Blasphemy? All I did was survive. All I did was give him something no hunter ever thought of, trust. The enforcer commander raised his arm. Weapons hummed to life, ready to strike. You had a chance to submit, human. You chose defiance. Now the council demands final proof. Either your bond is broken here, or the predator dies with you. Asher's roar split the air, shaking the very cliffs. It was not just sound, it was declaration, fury, and promise rolled into one. Hunters staggered backward, some faltering at the sheer force of it. But Zorak only laughed, the sound harsh. He drew his warblade, its edge sparking as energy coursed through it. Then let it be tested in blood. The battle began in an instant. Hunters surged forward, loosing plasma bolts and harpoons. Asher lunged like a storm-given flesh, his talons carving through the first wave in a spray of sparks and broken steel. Elias darted beside him, rifle snapping with precise bursts, each shot dropping a hunter before they could flank. The canyon transformed into chaos, shouts, blasts, and the ground-shaking thunder of predator against army. An enforcer unit advanced, their formation flawless, weapons locking onto Asher. Elias saw it too late. Bolts of ionized energy lashed out, searing across Asher's scales and staggering the great beast. Pain echoed through their bond, sharp enough to make Elias grit his teeth. He sprinted forward, hurling a scavenged smoke charge into their midst. The canyon filled with choking haze, buying Asher the breath he needed. The predator tore through the fog like a ghost, his jaws snapping down on the enforcer's heavy gun, shredding metal like parchment. Zorik entered the fray at last, his warblade cutting a path through the smoke. His strikes were precise, furious, each one aimed to kill. He clashed with Asher in a collision of predator and warrior, steel screeching against claw, sparks and blood flying in equal measure. The impact sent shockwaves rattling through the stone walls. Elias moved to flank, but Zorik's eyes flicked to him, calculating. With a savage kick, he sent Elias sprawling back, his blade rising high to strike Asher's exposed chest. The predator twisted, but the blade bit deep, cutting through scales to draw a torrent of blood. Asher roared in agony, the sound reverberating through Elias's very bones. No! Elias's voice broke through the din. He scrambled up, rifle raised, and fired 3 rapid bursts. Zorik spun, his armor sparking as 2 shots struck home, but his rage was bottomless. He charged Elias, blade poised for the killing blow. Asher moved before thought could form. With a surge of wounded strength, the predator hurled his massive body between them, intercepting the blade meant for Elias. The weapon sank into Asher's side, and the beast's roar turned guttural, primal. Elias felt the weight of it through their bond, not surrender, not defeat, but an unyielding refusal to let his companion fall. Fury ignited in Elias, hotter than fear. He drew the combat knife from his belt and lunged. The blade drove upward into the joint of Zorik's armor, piercing flesh beneath. The hunter bellowed, staggering back, his grip loosening. Elias wrenched the warblade free from Asher's wound and, with a raw cry, swung it in a single desperate arc. The strike cleaved across Zorik's chest, sending him crashing to the ground, breath ragged, eyes wide with disbelief. The canyon froze. Hunters faltered, staring at their fallen champion. The enforcers lowered their weapons, calculation flashing through their faceless masks. Asher stood trembling but unbowed, blood running from his wounds, his golden eyes burning with undimmed ferocity. Elias lifted the warblade, its edge dripping with the mix of predator's blood and hunters. His voice carried across the stunned battlefield. This bond is no trick. It is no weapon to be caged. It is trust earned in fire and pain. If you fear it, then you fear what makes us human. The enforcer commander stepped forward, his weapon lowering fully. The silence stretched, a verdict waiting. Finally his voice rang out. The council will not silence this. What has been seen cannot be unseen. The human and the predator are bound, and no decree can unmake it. The hunters shifted uneasily, their ranks breaking. Some looked away in shame, others in dawning respect. Zorik lay gasping, pride shattered, unable to deny the truth his blade had failed to cut down. Asher swayed, his strength bleeding away. Elias dropped the warblade and caught the beast's massive head in his hands. "Stay with me," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Asher's breath rumbled weakly, but his eye fixed on Elias with unbroken trust. The enforcers retrieved their wounded and retreated to their ships. The hunters followed in silence, leaving the canyon scarred but quiet once more. Only Elias and Asher remained in the stillness, man and predator, bloodied but alive. Elias sank to his knees beside his companion, exhaustion crashing over him. The war was not over. He knew the council's fear would only grow and the galaxy's judgment would come in harsher forms. But in this moment, beneath the silent cliffs, they had stood together against all odds. Asher's breathing steadied, slow but strong. Elias leaned against him, eyes closing as the predator's warmth radiated like a shield. "We'll face them," he murmured, half to himself, half to the bond that tied them. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." The canyon, once filled with the roar of battle, fell quiet again. But the echo of their defiance would ripple far beyond its stone walls, carried into the halls of the council and whispered through the galaxy. The human and the predator had stood as one. And nothing, no law, no fear, no empire, could erase it.